What if I told you the most brilliant military victories in history started out as total disasters? Today, we're diving into the audacious battle plans that went horribly wrong before they went spectacularly right. These aren't just stories of victory, they're epic tales of resilience, where leaders stared failure in the face and refused to blink. First up, the Battle of Britain. In 1940, Hitler's Luftwaffe was poised to crush the Royal Air Force and pave the way for an invasion. Their plan was brutal and simple: destroy British airfields and cripple their ability to fight back. And at first, it was working. The RAF was on its knees, losing planes and pilots at an unsustainable rate. It looked like the end. But then, a stroke of fate, or perhaps a fatal error by the Germans. A stray bomber accidentally hit London. Churchill, in a daring act of retaliation, ordered a small raid on Berlin. This infuriated Hitler. He diverted the entire might of the Luftwaffe away from the critical airfields to terrorize London instead. This shift, known as the Blitz, was horrifying for civilians. But it gave the RAF the breathing room it desperately needed. They could regroup, repair, and rearm. When the Luftwaffe returned to their original targets, they faced a re-energized and formidable opponent. The initial brutal plan to wipe out the RAF had failed, and in its failure it handed Britain the very key to its survival and ultimate victory in the skies. Next, we traveled to ancient Rome, to the darkest days of the Second Punic War. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, had just handed Rome a series of devastating defeats, culminating in the massacre at Cannae. Rome was in a state of panic. Hannibal was at the gates, and the city's destruction seemed inevitable. The conventional wisdom was to face him head-on, to try and crush his army in another major battle. But one man, Quintus Fabius Maximus, proposed a radically different and deeply unpopular strategy. It was a plan that felt like a failure from the start. Instead of direct confrontation, Fabius advocated for a war of attrition. He would shadow Hannibal's army, launch small surprise attacks on his supply lines, and constantly harass his foragers, but he would never, ever engage in a pitched battle. This earned him the nickname Conctator, the Delayer. The Roman people and the Senate hated it, saw it as cowardly and un-Roman. They wanted a glorious victory, not this slow, grinding, seemingly pointless campaign. They even removed him from command for a time, leading to another disastrous defeat. But eventually, they realized Fabius was right. His brutal, patient plan didn't deliver a single glorious victory. Instead, it slowly bled Hannibal's seemingly invincible army dry. It wore down his men, starved his resources, and kept the war going long enough for Rome to rebuild its strength. Fabius's initial failure to fight was actually the strategic genius that saved the Republic and allowed Scipio Africanus to eventually defeat Hannibal on his own turf. Finally, let's jump to the Pacific theater of World War II. The American island-hopping campaign was a cornerstone of their strategy to defeat Japan. The idea was to bypass heavily fortified Japanese islands and instead seize strategically important, but less defended ones to build air bases, slowly advancing toward the Japanese mainland. But the first major test of this strategy, at the Battle of Guadalcanal, was anything but a smooth success. The initial landings were easy, but the Japanese reaction was swift and savage. For 6 long months, American Marines were trapped on the island, facing relentless attacks, naval bombardments, and horrific jungle conditions. Supply lines were cut, and at times it felt like a desperate, losing battle. The campaign was on the brink of collapse multiple times. It seemed the island-hopping plan was a brutal failure, costing too many lives for too little gain. Yet the Americans held on. They learned painful lessons about logistics, jungle warfare, and Japanese tactics. Guadalcanal became a crucible. By refusing to give up, by enduring the initial catastrophic phase of the plan, the U.S. military turned the tide. The victory, though incredibly costly, bled the Japanese Navy and Air Force of irreplaceable experienced men and material. The failure at Guadalcanal was, in fact, the brutal, necessary education that perfected the island-hopping strategy, paving the way for the ultimate victory in the Pacific. These stories show us that sometimes the path to victory isn't a straight line. It's often paved with initial failures, with moments where everything seems lost. But it's the ability to adapt, endure, and learn from those brutal setbacks that separates a failed plan from a war-winning strategy. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to like and subscribe for more.